right,
Welcome to Under the Radar, a look at indie comics you might not have heard of. Thanks for coming. The labyrinthing past to room 406A. But no, my name's John Barber. I'm the editor-in-chief of a comic company called Pug W. I used to be editor-in-chief at IDW and editor at Marvel, and I wrote a lot of Transformers comics, and I'm moderating. I'm just here to introduce everybody. So from starting from over here, we've got the crew behind the writing of Powers Squared. This is the one I knew the name of. It's, no, I'm kidding. Powers Squared. David Hankins, Paul Hankins, and Trevor Hankins. I didn't call you Marty and Eli. Next up, Monster Matador writer Stephen Princeton, and finally, it's Prince.
Prince, yeah.
I thought okay, you know what? I was sure that was sort of what it was, but it was misprinted in the JPEG you sent, and then I was like, oh man, was I saying it wrong the whole time we were on that live stream? So I was like,
I got it fixed in the
oh my god, okay. Going great.
Just get this one. Just get the
And Chingona, writer and artist, right? You do everything. Erik, Arreaga. So thanks everybody for being here. Why don't we start on this side, work our way down, and if you could tell us about yourselves and your comic, and we'll get things going.
Okay, I'm David Hankins. I've always thought of myself as a writer, though I've never made a living at it. We 8 or 9 years ago decided to do a comic with really no experience, didn't know what we were doing, right?
Yeah.
We sort of walked around, figured out a plot, and we decided because they're identical twins that we would make the main characters be identical twins.
Yeah.
Because they're not necessarily represented very well in like comic books and anime.
Right.
You want to tell them what the story's about?
Powers Squared is about identical twin brothers who share superpowers that are granted to them by a kitsune, yokai. And there's a scientist named Dr. Atlas who wants to steal their powers for his own nefarious purposes.
Yeah, and we put out 22 issues so far, and the 23rd is coming out in December.
It's available here though, right?
Yes, this is our first time to table at a con, and so yeah, we're at Small Press 304, and we have all the issues available as well as a couple of trades.
Stephen Prince, I'm the writer and creator of Monster Matador, which is a post-apocalyptic kaiju throwdown about a matador that fights monsters to make a better world for his daughter. This is our first collection. We just won as a finalist for the International Latino Book Awards this year, and we're currently on Kickstarter with a campaign. My background, I used to work in marketing and product development at a toy company. But I've always been making comics.
Hi, my name is Erik Arreaga, and I'm the creator of, this is my very first creator-owned book. Her name is Chingona, which means badass girl in Spanish. And it takes place in San Diego, where I'm born and raised, and she's a Latina anti-hero. And it's pretty much a revenge story, and also like what happened. Her mother died. This is a world of superheroes, and her mom was a big superhero, but her mom was killed, but no one cared. No superheroes that did anything to like avenge her and everything. So when she grew up, she's trying to figure out what happened. Why did not no one care about my mom? And as she's going through her mission, good or bad, she takes you out if you're in her way. Yeah, so it just, and I figured there's not very many Latina anything, so I wanted to do something. I have a daughter, I have a wife, my mom, my grandson. I just took a lot of inspiration from a lot of women in my life, and I was like, I need to empower show that into my book. So I do that in here. It's very rated R, because I like gore and violence. And I don't like happy stories. I don't like happy endings. I don't like anything that's cheerful. Completely opposite of who I am. And so, yeah, so it's very gritty and dark and stuff like that. Also, what's very unique about, I feel, my books coming up is every book is going to have a soundtrack, and it connects with exactly what she does. She has her own version of Siri. She calls her Quetzal, and she tells her to play her Chingazo playlist when she's ready to fight. So when you scan the QR code, it goes to the Spotify, and it tells you when to play the first song, and you can listen to the song she's listening to while she's kicking ass. So yeah, so I like to try to make my books very interactive, kind of like, you know, do a little bit more than just kind of simple read. So yeah, that's my.
That's awesome. So, like, you guys didn't have a background in making comics. You have always been making comics, and then this is your first creator-owned comic. Can we dive in a little more? Like, this is a question I always ask in my podcast, but like, what is your origin story? Like, where did you get? What inspired you to want to get into comics, and then how did you wind up making these particular ones? It's yeah. Obviously, good judgment is not going to be one of the answers.
Yeah.
We didn't want money.
Not to make a profit or anything. I always like to say, someone's made money on it, it's just not me. I think we were just, I think we were kind of inspired by Comic-Con.
Yeah.
We've been going for about 10, 15 years, and we were like, you go to panels, and you see the people on the other side of it, and you go, well, you know, they're just regular people, and they had an idea, and they created it, and so I think we just thought it'd be fun to try to do that.
Yeah.
I don't think we necessarily thought we'd be still doing it 7 years later, still printing them, but it's fun to do, and I think that's why we do it. But we had no experience at all.
Yeah. What were the things that drove you to Comic-Con? Like, was it comics? Was it just the media? Or what stuff? Like, even on that level, what got you into this?
Well, I think she got us. My wife had heard about it and wanted to go. And so we went, we would go, it was easy to get a pass back then.
Mm-hmm.
You get a 5-day pass, and we would go like one day, and like, because they were kind of younger, and we were like, well, maybe we should go a little longer. So we decided we started going to panels, and that's kind of when we got the idea of that maybe we could create something someday, be on that side of the panel.
Yeah, with making a comic, it helped that Trevor and I also grew up reading a lot of comics and manga.
Yeah, I've been, since I was born and raised in San Diego, Comic-Con has just been my life. My first time going was in '91, so I've always, and I've not missed a year other than the pandemic years. And '98 was when I first got my booth, my very own booth there. But it's just the passion of drawing. I've always admired comic art. I think I was like in 7th grade when I decided this is my life. This is what I'm going to do from now on. And during that time, I was always just doing like indie books for local artists, like creators. And then I was doing a lot of fan art. But then I finally I've had stories for like a decade, and I was like, I need to get this going. So this is when last year, I quit the real job, and I was like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do, and I put everything into this, and starting the series with the Kickstarter next year. But yeah, I mean, I've always done art in some form, because it's just, again, my life. It's everything I've done, and doing conventions and everything just kind of feels that passion. I've done shows all over the world, and it's amazing. I've been able to do shows like that just because I can, put a nice drawing to a piece of paper. So it's always filled me in that joy and stuff like that. So.
I wasn't allowed to read comics when I was younger, so I made my own. But for some reason, my parents let me get a subscription to Mad Magazine. So I'd make my own Mad Magazine. So I've always had my hand in it. I've always kind of done it for fun, and I would print up a few copies here and there for friends. And then there used to be a store called Meltdown Comics on Sunset, And they used to have comic book workshops, writing workshops, art workshops, and I met a bunch of local creators there. And they all kind of started making books. I was writing and drawing Monster Matador. I had done a black and white series. And, you know, in the past 5-10 years, really, you know, Kickstarter, Comixology, all these things changed that really opened up the market for independent ideas and things like that. And whereas before you had to get into Diamond, you had to, you know, there were a lot of hoops and a lot of barriers to jump through, whereas now, you know, it's as simple as putting a book on Kickstarter. And in some ways I was kind of lucky because we launched our first Kickstarter for the color book about 2 months after the pandemic hit. Which, you know, but the plus side is everyone was home.
Yeah.
No one was able to go out and get their comic fix, so a lot of people were moving into crowdfunding, and it allowed, you know, books like mine and others to really kind of find a foothold and get an audience, and crowdfunding has just been growing and growing as a legitimate alternative, you know, to the direct market. So that's kind of where I started with this.
Yeah, no, that time was a wild time, and a lot of stuff changed, and a lot of comics hit big, and or hit well, but some didn't, and you know, it's illustrative of how unpredictable all this stuff is. My next question here and close. But okay, yeah. So everybody, when you got together, did everybody find a community when you started? I mean, it sounds like you had that meltdown to get things going.
Yeah, that was. Oh man, it's probably the hardest thing for most creators to do, you know. But it honestly is I think it's the most important thing. And once you get up over that hump and just put yourself out there, it really just, things kind of flow from there. Like I said, I wrote and drew. I'm nowhere near the artist that Fabio Alves is, who draws the book now. But just having a book, just having something, you know, I got a lot of support from creators, and a lot of us kind of, in a way, like you come up together with people, and you know, you get introduced to people. Someone has a connection here, someone does this. Like Kickstarter, 3 of my friends who I met at Meltdown, we all launched at the same time. So, you know, it was just, you just have this support group, and you're all kind of encouraging each other and promoting each other, and it's really, I think, like, helpful, you know, and probably one of the most important things. And I think one thing I see a lot is frustration from people being like, well, I don't want to do that, or I don't know anybody, or whatever. But one thing I found, especially in the indie community, is that so many people are just willing to help and offer advice. Like every time I'm at a con, I mean, until I met these guys, David, whatever, you know, they ask me about indie comics, and I'm you know, always happy to help people because people help me, and you just grow your community that way. And you know, like with Kickstarter, I know you're running a Kickstarter, and I was going to tell you after this, but you know, if you have any questions, obviously feel free to reach out, because I've done 9 of them, so I know, I kind of know, you know, I can kind of point you to places and people and things like that. So it helps. I found my artist because he did a book with my friend, and I had 2 artists who it just didn't work out, and I was stuck. I didn't know what to do, and literally he finished my friend's book, and my friend introduced me to him, and we've been doing it now for 5 years. So it's things like that. That's why I think it's so important just to kind of, like, you know, just reach out to people and talk to people. And a lot of comic shops, especially in LA, like the Comic Bug, have creator groups that will meet there, where you can make those connections. So.
We started without a community. We were just wanting to do it, and we didn't. Again, we knew some people that had kind of dabbled in comics, but not really done anything in it, and we just went ahead and did it ourselves, I guess. They always tell you to find your community or your core group or whatever before you start doing it, we really like, well, just a few before we found that out.
Yeah, that first, regardless, that first step you make by yourself, I think, you know, like that first step out there to get into start, you know, meeting people. And you've met, obviously you've met people now.
Yeah, we also do a podcast where we get to invite other creators on and talk about their stuff, so that kind of helps too.
Yeah, I grew up, I had that typical kind of upbringing where, you know, there was tons of kids on the block, we all played together and the whole thing, and lucky enough, a group of us we all wanted to be comic artists, you know, so we all helped each other growing up, you know, and again, during Comic-Con, we all go to Comic-Con together and get shot down with the portfolio reviews, and, you know, but we all work off of each other and then the whole thing. So but I've always been part of something related to just like an energy of pushing me. And I think what helps me now is I run the largest San Diego Comic-Con Facebook group. I just kind of blew up by accident, but now I have these people like, hey, I'm here to support you, you know, thanks for any tips and stuff you give me. I'm more than happy to support you in your art and things like that. So I've always been part of like this group, and then especially when you're traveling to conventions everywhere, you make friends because you always have to budget, and you have like 5 artists in one room at the hotels and stuff. So yeah, I've always had a group. We're always sharing ideas, we're working off of each other, and it's pretty important, I think, because you get that connection to the whole comic community in that way, and it just builds you up more. But,
yeah. So, Stephen, you talk a little about how you found your collaborators, and do you do all of it on your own, or do you have other people that you work with on some aspects of the comic, like letters, colorists, that kind of stuff?
I mean, we have a colorist. Oh, are you talking to him?
Well, everybody.
Oh,
I mean, I know you
talked about. Yeah, I have a colorist and obviously the artist, but everything else I do. So.
I do everything I just found a colorist that's gonna help me out with certain things. Yeah, everything from lettering to all the stuff. My book is bilingual because of just the way she speaks. So my wife is actually a bilingual teacher. So I credit her for helping me with the actual editorials to make sure that the language is right. So I have her helping me with that type of stuff. But overall, yeah, I do everything.
Yeah. So this question probably won't apply to you, but for everybody else, how do you find your collaborators, especially given that you were coming in, you guys, the Power Squared team, were coming in without that sense, and with the artist and colorist?
Yeah, well, there was something at Comic-Con called the Comic Creator Connection, and it's sort of like speed dating. You go in as a writer. There's way more writers than there are artists at this, and so you would have you have like 15 minutes with the person, then you're off, or 10 on time, and you have to like kind of show them your stuff, and they show you their stuff, and at the end, Doug Neff, who runs it, says, okay, at the end of the night, write the 3 people you met, and that's it, And the first time I was up like, at Comic-Con, you get home late and sort of like up at like 2 in the morning trying to type these guys' names into the email. Say at least we didn't get a date out of the first 3 times we met. And we almost had a date, I'll say, with this artist that we had not actually talked to, but we had seen her stuff kind of in passing, and we were trying to work with her, and it kind of fell apart before anything really got going. And so we went back to another Creator Connection thing at WonderCon, and there was an artist there who he couldn't attend, but he passed out his samples, and he was actually the best artist in the room, even though he wasn't there, because everybody else was kind of very like, yeah, I can draw you something, here. They weren't prepared for it, I guess. And so we thought about contacting him, and he initially turned us down, so we rewrote the book and I was gonna send to him again. And, he was in part of a Facebook group, and I thought, well, I'll try that. So I went to the Facebook group and we found our first artist and colorist through that. We did 2 issues with the first colorist, and then we were submitting it to Comixology. And Chip Mosier, who ran it, actually turned out we went to the same college 10 years apart, but we were alumni and all that. And he took a liking to us for a while, and so he suggested that he could find us a colorist through SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. Put us in touch with a couple of professors there. We talked to some people and ended up hiring a friend of the person that seemed to be interested as opposed to, because we were trying to get, and a lot of this is out of pocket, so I'm trying to keep the cost down, so I can't pay you, the colorist then were, I want $100 a page. Okay, I'm not paying the artist $100 a page. So we found somebody that would do it for the price, and he did a couple of issues, and then wanted to do something. I always felt like we were burning through colors. People, I don't want to be a colorist anymore because I work on Power Square. Because he did 2, then his friend did 3, and then she decided to leave. And she also was the one that said after 5 issues that she thought we needed a new artist. So she helped us find an artist through SCAD. Rachel Wells we used for 17 issues, 18 issues.
Yeah.
And then we hired another person from SCAD, and then she decided she didn't want to, do it after a few issues, and we ended up hiring a friend of a friend.
Yeah.
And Julia Cannon, and has been the colorist, and then the last year, Rachel decided she wanted to try to do something else, and so we hired Julia to do the book, because she had done some artwork that I thought was pretty good, and didn't really work out. She's still working on the 4th issue, and we decided to hire another artist who had been the colorist to replace her, but so we're working with her on another issue, so hopefully we'll have Jen Moreno will be our artist, and Julia will be our colorist going forward.
That's, you're really going through the colorists, you're just promoting all the colorists.
It's a full-time job to say their name.
It's funny though, like I'm doing a comic with Andrew Griffith, who I used to do Transformers with, called Cigna, and it was like Spinal Tap with colorists, and it was like people that we've known for, 10 years, and it was like, I did these couple pages, I don't think I want to color anymore. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's funny how that can happen.
Yeah.
So this kind of, do you want to talk about where you met your artist initially, or Steven?
No, our main artist is in Brazil and our colorist is in Mexico. I've done a lot of pinup artists who I'll find Facebook has a group called Connecting Writers with Artists, and one with Connecting Artists with Writers. So I've met people through there. I meet people our colorist Alex introduced me to an artist, Luis Calzada, who was doing a spin-off book of this with monster fighting luchadors, and he was, I guess, Metallica's official artist for their tour this summer.
Oh.
So it's really, once you kind of get into it, and that's why just networking and things like that is people will introduce you to other people. And if you're a writer looking for an artist, I hate to say this because, it's always important to give people opportunities, but comics are hard, okay? And really what I look for in an artist, especially someone who's going to do a book, is someone that has had at least an experience doing at least a comic or 2. Because I've seen it a lot where a lot of people want to draw a comic, and then they sit down and have to draw a comic, and you realize, wow, this is a lot of work, right? And we're doing indie comics, which means we don't have the luxury of kill fees and paying someone for 5 pages and doing another thing. So while I hate to say only get someone with experience, but kind of when you're looking for artists, really not just get to know them, but make sure they understand that they want to actually draw, what your story is, because it is a lot of work, and the money tends to add up when you're doing it. So, but they're really great. A lot of those Facebook groups are really great. I've met a lot of artists through there. I've met a lot of friends use artists through there. And then, just asking other creators that you know or within your community, because it's always good to know who you're working with. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. One thing I've liked about it is that we've actually the first artist we had was in Indonesia, and the colors was in the Philippines. I'm liking the fact that I could actually talk to the artists that I'm working with locally to a certain degree, because I never met the first artist we used, and I only met the second colorist after like 5 years. We had her on a podcast just to say, catch up. I'd never met her, but so it's nice to actually be able to talk to the people, I think, face to face sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's a weird thing with comics too, is like you can have these people you have these like really intimate relationships with, in the sense that you're creating something together that you've never met in person.
Right.
Keizama and I did Optimus Prime comic for a few years and never met, still never met them. And also, like, you're Japanese, how are you dealing with my terrible scripts? Like, how are you, like, I understand English, but I'm talking about like here's a VTOL flying by, and I'm like, oh wait, that's like, how do you know that? What is Japanese for that? Anyway, you mentioned this a little, Eric, that you left your day job, but another facet of comics, I think, in the present day is that for almost everybody, I don't know that this is like the only job that comics that people do a lot of times. Even the super successful writers and artists, that are the big names or whatever, are usually doing something else somewhere else too. So what do you guys do when you're not making comics, and how do you make comics fit in with that?
Well, I'm an executive director at Lionsgate. I work in rights management. And I look at the evenings as my time to actually do something creative, and so I'm either working on the comic book or some other writing I'm doing, or writing a review for his blog. So you have to sort of, the problem sometimes is the artist will deliver a page, like we might get pages this weekend, and we're not able to look at them because we're doing this. But you just have to sort of, whenever something comes in, sit down and look at it, and try to turn it around as fast as you can so that they can keep going. As far as writing, I think we have a lot of ideas and have written a lot of scripts, so we're kind of catching up to our backlog on that stuff.
Yeah.
I just, ever since quitting my job about a year or so ago, I've just taken on commissions. I just do a lot of commissions. I enjoy doing that, especially on like sketch covers and stuff like that. And that's kind of holds me over during the month while I'm working on my project and stuff like that. So that's done pretty well. I've been able to match myself to my past job with doing that. In the meantime,
That's awesome.
yeah. So it makes me work harder, and then because you got to do a lot of commissions. But yeah, overall, I get to do that. And luckily, I have a wife that has a good job too. So, but yeah, but that's how I've kind of managed to cross over in that form. And then ever since releasing the book this year, the book has been doing okay. And that's so I've been able to work off of that on doing less commissions because it kind of evens out now. So, but yeah, that's how I kind of crossed.
I question my life choices a lot. Right now I'm a stay-at-home dad, kind of in between stuff. Yeah, you really need to have a passion for it. You really need to want to do it. It's not the kind of thing where you're like, oh, I'm going to make my comic and get rich quick. I think a lot of us that do it, it's because we love it and you have a story to tell, or you want to express yourself through art. So that's kind of like the biggest thing, I think.
Yeah, this is a question I would always ask people when they brought like portfolios up to me is, what do you want from comics? And what do you guys want? Like, is this a stepping stone to the next thing? Is this the thing you want to do, and this is the project, or where do you want? Like, ideally, where do you see your comics being in your lives, and how have they been, and all that as well? I want to start. I don't know. Want to go opposite? Or,
Oh,
You want to go?
yeah, yeah. I just want to create. You know, I just want to just draw and create and tell a story, and hopefully I come across the story I have in my head. It comes, you know, off correctly in the book. Because the way when I started her, I have, you know, like a good 20 to 25 issue arc I can go through. But yeah, all I want is just to, you know, keep creating, keep drawing, and be, I guess, unique. Like I said, like I added the soundtrack to the book, and I like to do more in that form. Like, you know, like add something, you know. I mean, are the technologies there that we had? You know, it's with QR codes or anything, you know, VR. It's there, and I want to incorporate things like that to make it more exciting. And you know, but still, you can hold your book and, you know, have fun with it. But I want to kind of create a little bit more and be more interactive with the book. So throw people for a loop, like, oh man, I could, you know, use my phone and something comes to life or whatever, you know. But at the same time, you don't have to. It's still just plainly in the book there, type of stuff. So.
Yeah, same. I love telling stories. I've never really had a desire to be like writing Batman or something. So for me, indie comics has always been kind of the place. You know, comics, like I said, comics are hard, right? Even if you're publishing through a publisher, there's a lot of stuff that's a whole separate panel and discussion. For me, like, yeah, you know, I love the fact that I have like a graphic novel now. We're running our ninth Kickstarter with our second series from this. I just love telling stories and just having that outlet to do it. So, I mean, I'd love to see this taken to different places and whatever, but at the same time, I'm very happy with what I'm doing. And I think that's kind of probably the most important thing, you know, I think for all of us, is that you have that sense of accomplishment. Because I see it a lot in indie comics, so many people fall into the trap of like, oh, I haven't got my movie deal yet, I haven't got this yet, I haven't got that yet. But you know, I mean, it takes time, it takes years, like nothing happens overnight, you know? If you have the patience, then, you know, you'll get something like this, so.
I always feel like I've always tried to be creative. As I say, I write novels on the other side, and this seems to be a way of having it. It takes time. It's not instantaneous, but at least you can have a vision and have it come out, you know, as close to your vision as, because it's a collaborative effort. It's not just you deciding, and sometimes, you know, I know with this book, we had to like change some of the artwork because the artist couldn't draw what we wanted him to draw.
Yeah.
And so you have to like make kind of, and with, when Rachel was doing it, she would say, oh, you know, I moved this panel to this page and this page, you know, okay, you know, and it worked, or it didn't work. If we didn't like it, we'd tell her not to, but it's a collaborative thing, and I like the fact that at the end of the day, you actually have something that you can say, I did this, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
I have other writing I want to do, but this is an important piece of it.
yeah. And I guess I'd also say the fact that there are independent people who can find success who still find success inspiring. Like if like Brian Lee O'Malley or Eric Powell can do it, then I can do it too.
Yeah, that's good. Well, actually, that's a question I had. Have you got to meet anybody like during this that was like a
like somebody that you, I don't know, like inspire, whenever you got to meet your heroes or your inspirations or anything? Yeah?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, doing conventions,
Yeah.
over the years, you kind of run into like everyone. And I've literally met every single person I've admired, all the way to Frank Pizzetta.
Oh, wow.
I was lucky to meet him the one year he was at San Diego Comic-Con in '95.
Wow.
A whole other story, but yeah, it was the greatest interaction I've ever had. I mean, this dumb 15-year-old kid looking at this master and asking him to draw me something. And, it was great, but I got a signature out of it, and it was super cool. Literally this year, I had Tom McFarlane come up to my page in Phoenix and checked out my book, and he's like, he liked it, he enjoyed it. His assistant bought the book right away. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool, all right, and these are the people I admire. Sam Keith is my all-time favorite artist, and met him and talked to him a little bit, and yeah, it's great. Like those are the things that I wanted to do, and again, it's all because I can, make a little funny drawing on a piece of paper. I think it's crazy. It's just, it's big, because literally all we do is just draw something fun, and we're in the communities like this, and I think that's a pretty big, amazing type thing. Yeah, and overall, like I said, over the years, you meet people. I've had one, I don't know, maybe BC celebrity buy the book already online. Danya Ramirez. She was in like X-Men and things like that. She purchased the book, and she she did a shout out. Like, okay, yeah. So I've met a lot of cool people during this.
Sorry, not to get in the way, but like a funny Sam Keith story. Sam Keith was doing, this is a story I heard, I wasn't there for it. He was doing Marvel Comics Presents, he was doing Wolverine and Marvel Comics Presents. Sending the pages in, via FedEx like you were in those days. They tear open the box and it's an 8-page story, and there's 7 pages in there. They're like, why didn't you send the 7th page? So I think they maybe call him or something. He's drawn the 7th page on the inside of the FedEx box.
Oh man, that's completely Sam Keith.
Yes.
That's 100% what he would do. Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, what a great story. That's awesome. Dan, you know what page?
No, I don't know.
I would love to know what page.
That is pretty good, yeah, possibly possible.
I mean, just looking at Marvel Comics Presents in itself, just the artwork. That's completely like, oh yeah, that's a FedEx box page. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I've got to meet a lot of people, and the more you keep doing it, the more people kind of become familiar with you. But for me, the biggest thing was Jose Ladrone did a cover for our latest issue, and that was pretty cool because he's kind of like a legend and whatever. But I think I'm trying to think. Scott Snyder had used Monster Matador and his class on creating action scenes, which is pretty cool. So yeah, even though you're an indie comic, like I said, people do pay attention, and the more you're out there, the more you put yourself out there, the more people will recognize it, and people are really encouraging, so just cool.
Well, as for meeting people that we admire, it's usually been as an attendee at a place like San Diego Comic-Con or even a smaller convention where we had to go out of our way to do so, but we have met a lot of the people we admire, like I already mentioned Bradley O'Malley and Eric Powell. We've also talked to and even interviewed people on our podcast like David Peterson, who does Mouse Guard, and too many
James Silvani.
Yeah, James Silvani, who was an artist for Darkwing Duck. And we, even at this convention, we were inviting more people, like Tony Fleeks or Patrick Horvath. It's not confirmed yet. But actually, we learned that at CSUN, which is our alma mater, I guess, comics professor, Charles Hatfield, was using our comic as an example. A couple people that inspired me to pursue comics, aside from David Peterson is one of them. A couple others were like Stan Sakai, Usagi Ojimbo, and Jeff Smith, who does Bone. And having talked to them, fortunately, they turned out to be pretty chill guys. Yeah.
If not for the existence of Ron Lim, Stan Sakai would be the nicest guy in comics. I have a sketch that he did for me when I was like 10 years old. I still have that on my shelf. And, it's one of those, he's a nice guy. What piece of advice do you wish you had when you started out that you know now? I don't know, anybody, if anything.
Well, I actually, someone kind of asked me that, like at San Diego Comic Con. And I was thinking, like, if I were to tell my younger self something, I've already done it. Like, there was nothing, it's just, just stay passionate. That's literally it, because it ends up happening because of passion. So there's nothing I could change. Maybe I could have done stuff earlier, but that's something else. But
well, maybe it's even just a hard earned lesson that you pass on to somebody else,
Yeah. So I wouldn't. So I couldn't tell myself like, no, okay, to do this different. Like, no, just stay passionate. It's gonna happen, and it has, and so, and then like, I'm here. I'm doing panels and stuff, and it happens. Might take time. Some people do it quicker. Some people take some time. But I think one of the coolest things I always keep in my mind, it makes me not go crazy, is that like Stan Lee created Spider-Man at 40. He created and he wrote. It took like another few years for everything to actually build up, and it took him till age 40 to get that going. And like disaster at work for it to happen. And I always remember like, I'm 45, and I was like, I feel like I'm on the right track. I'm doing well. I'm doing okay. There's nothing wrong, and I still have the rest of my life to continue this. So, but yeah, I always say just passion. As long as you're passionate about it, because that's the key to doing all this. I think everything's fine from there.
You keep, as I get older, I keep lowering my standards to when he created Ravage 2099 and when he created Stripperella. But I'll take what I can get.
I've been fortunate to have gotten a lot of good advice, but one thing I will pass on is don't be afraid to fail. Success is about survival, and survival it's a lot of failure along the way, and you never hear about that. Our first Kickstarter did well. Our second one kind of dropped, and then we went back up. And a lot of that is finding your footing, finding your audience, but also like it's adapting. Like Kickstarter is constantly changing, constantly evolving. And it's really just kind of like, that's why, again, it's so important to kind of reach out to other creators just to get a finger on the pulse of where things are. But really, like, failure is not bad, because you take it, you learn from it, and then you do it better next time. And so that's probably the biggest lesson, and something I always kind of keep in mind, that like, even if something doesn't work out as you plan it, you just keep moving forward. So.
Well, Kamal Hennessy on our show, and he was talking about how he was hit with a book about being an independent comic book professional, and which we found, we'd already done like 10, 15 issues by the time we read the book. But one of the things he talks about there is, you kind of have to find your audience before you start launching into doing something, and maybe that would have been idea. We just, yeah, as I said, we just don't luckily, let's do it. You know, gotta do it.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, some of that's tricky though, right? Like where
Yeah.
you can, manufacturing something for an audience isn't gonna work either, a lot of the time.
No.
And you're not gonna be as happy making it, so it is that trick of like finding the thing you wanna
Yeah.
do and then,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to just do that and then find the place where it goes, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, that might have been, or if we'd gone to like classes before or something like that, but we just sort of simply didn't, so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're almost out of time. Does anybody have any questions? Oh. Wait, you, no, the one to, third row. I was kidding.
No.
No.
So I know a lot of the most popular stuff is through Kickstarter, through crowdfunding. So outside of, let's say, with crowdfunding, with that, outside of that though, what are other ways that you feel like are good ways to grow the brand, grow the business, grow basically getting the word out for your comic? Is it mainly just through the crowdfunding stuff, or is there other ways?
Conventions.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, conventions are, that's, I have like, okay, I have like a Kickstarter audience, and then I have a convention audience,
Mhm.
that as hard as I try to not wanna go to Kickstarter. But you know what I mean, do signings at your local comic shop.
Yeah.
You know, most comic shops will let you do that, and I highly, highly, highly encourage you. Because the best part about doing that stuff is that you're working on your pitch constantly.
Yeah.
Like, I did a show, my first show was, at the beginning, it was miserable because by the end of the show, I had it worked out, boom, right? And it's something that, because you're getting feedback on everything you say for people, and you're gonna find like something you say, like someone's gonna go, oh, what, and something you say, they're just gonna keep walking, so it's even like store signings, things like that, it's market research, right? That's what everyone does,
Yeah,
like all the big companies do, so.
We found that being here, like, we were working on our pitch, and there's certain words you say, oh, and then suddenly somebody becomes interested because you say it's a Kasune or something like that, so, yeah, you have to tell them enough to get them interested in what you want them to read.
Yeah, and then, they're like the comic book store signings, that's, I think, one of the best ones. I just did one like a couple of weeks ago for the first time, and overall, I mean, the best time they used to do it on Wednesday or the Saturday, because Wednesday's comic book day,
Yeah.
and everyone comes in for the different comic books, and they're like, hey, here's something else. But everyone loves, especially to support their local artists. So, if you're from LA, I'm from San Diego, and all the people from San Diego came in, they're like, oh yeah, I'll support you. I mean, I would prefer like to give my pitch, but they're like, hey, just because you're San Diego, I'm gonna buy your book and I'll check it out. So it works really well. But overall, I think, like you said, like conventions, you have like the convention scene, and then you have your online scene. But like people want to meet the artist, they want to meet who you are, they want to do all that stuff. So conventions are really, really important. And usually, like now, again, you get in however you can, Artist Alley or booths, whatever. But I think, yeah, the conventions are the big ones. And then you try to push people, hey, I got Kickstarter, I got my website or whatever, and you sell online through your own store or through a Kickstarter.
And join like groups on Facebook,
Yeah.
whatever, all those places, there's a lot of like independent comic groups and things like that, like, it's just putting yourself out there.
Yeah. I think now that we've done a con, we wanna do more, and maybe not get a booth like we got, but, because of the expense, but, it is good to kind of, you do occasionally catch people's eyes, and you get a chance to try to sell them a product.
Yeah, and also like, again, doing shows, I'm going on 30 years and I've done them around the world. There's always a hit or miss at a convention. Even at a convention you do well at, like, you do well at LA, the following year you could be bombed. And there's always this weird changing thing. It's always different. I've had a handful of success in San Diego, and some are just like horrible. So you can never, it's hard to gauge, and it's hard to ask like your fellow artists, like, hey, how did you do? because they have a whole different thing, you know, than you have. So it's kind of, you can't really work off of that. People have their thing, so you got to do it on your own and make your own critique of how that show went for you, not for like how your neighbors did or anything like that. So
Yes, it's kind of true for the whole thing too. It's a good summing up of it, and perfect timing because we're out of time. Thank you all very much for coming. Really appreciate it. And thanks all for being here. Sorry, it was you were here, right? Are you here at the con?
yeah, I'm in Artist Alley 36. If you guys
We're
wanna-
SP 304.
And see, you're just.
I'm just walking around.
Yeah. Me too. Thanks a lot.
If you guys want to follow me, I have a QR code. Scan whatever. I run the largest Comic Con site on Facebook. So if you guys ever have questions or anything like that, you can follow me there. So.